TV.
This is Morning at NTV, and my name is Romeo Busiku. Is Lake Victoria safe? That's the $64,000 question we are going to be answering right here on the show. Well, with the unprecedented human pressure and population growth in the region, Africa's largest freshwater lake is under immense pressure. Yes, it's under immense pressure. Why? Over the past few months, nation media journalists have investigated the pressure on the lake, and the results they tell are very daunting. Water and sediment samples taken from different spots both in Uganda and Kenya reveal pesticides and hazardous material, begging the question. Here's the question. Could we have done more to protect the lake? Well, the National Environment Management Authority Executive Director Tom Okorut, highest at the hierarchy, we needed someone high the hierarchy to come and explain to us. This story has been in the realm for the longest time, and NTV has been at the forefront. What is happening at Lake Victoria? We thought UPDF being there would actually combat the issue of illegal fishing. Now we understand that is not the issue, and the issue is pollution. Tom Okorut, many thanks for having made the time to speak to us.
Thank you very much.
So, according to the experts, in our water, there are some microelements in there, metal and other things. You have phosphorus, you have nitrogen, which build up and create algae. What would be the hazardous effects of this on human health?
Well, first of all, thank you. And to discuss this in context, we have to bring it in context. Nitrogen and phosphorus are naturally occurring substances. Whether we introduce them or they occur in nature, and therefore they're essential components for growth. Okay, so their presence in the water is when you have it in some levels, it can trigger excessive growth of the algae that you see there. But that doesn't mean that the lake is polluted.
So what are the consequences of that algae on marine life?
No, algae is food. Actually, algae is, we call it the primary production, the first component, under which from algae, then the other things eat the algae, then the other those things, and then the fish and whatever.
So that's the main factor, Mr. Tom Okorut, that when they eat that algae, which is actually having some pesticides, and then I get to eat the fish, I might have some health ramifications in that regard.
No, not necessarily. And I think that is that's the misnomer.
Demystify.
That's the wrong perception that has come out from the NTV reporting all along, and that's what we want to correct.
Go ahead and demystify. That's why
we want to correct it. First of all, Lake Victoria is big, 68,000 square kilometers, and the US study that was done by the NV, which is obviously good, but you're a journalist, really went and picked samples on hotspots, what we call areas where you expect such to come. That's where there's like outflow from cities, Kisumu, outflow from Kampala and so forth. Along those small pockets, those hotspots, you expect spikes. That means increased concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus, and therefore increase in the algae that comes out from there and proliferation. But the lake is living, okay? The lake is not a pond. It's living. So because of the lake dynamics and whatever, you see that slowly whatever comes in, eventually it flows in the main lake, and that algae becomes very essential for the fish growth. Fish do not grow in those hotspots that we have. No.
Mr. Okomo, could we have done more to protect Lake Victoria, given this background where we sent UPDF to the freshwater bodies, thinking with their presence they would combat illegal fishing, but then we realized later on there was another dynamic, which was pollution, which was killing the marine life in that regard. Could we have done more? And the presence of the UPDF, do you think it's doing more or doing more harm? And should we do away with the UPDF and bring in the experts who actually understand marine life, go in there, into the lake, measure the toxicity levels, and find out what we are dealing with?
No, UPDF is there to do specific tasks, to deal with the issue of illegal fishing.
But it's not working.
It's working. It is working.
But the fish stocks are still not up. And
no.
Fish is still expensive.
Which data do you have? The fish stocks have changed. Actually, most of the fish factories that are closed have come back.
But why is fish still expensive?
Well, of course, the demand. That's normal economics. The fish is expensive because we're exporting. We're also eating a lot. Most people now want to eat fish. And so the demand for fish is high. And that's why the fish... Do you want the fish to be cheap?
Yes, for everyone to get involved.
No, no. The
Like,
fish,
like it used to be in the 70s. In the
Yeah.
90s, fish was very cheap.
how many people are there?
Well, the population has grown, but
Yeah,
then...
the population has grown and the
to-
demand for fish has increased. We have the same source of the lake. So the fish, what the UPDF has done is to create an environment where the fish production has come back. The methods that were, the legal method that people were using for catching fish have been removed. And the fish is allowed to produce in numbers that is supposed. And I'm sure within time, we shall be
The
able to have-
fish will produce, Mr. Tomokuru. That is fine. But then with the pesticides, with the organisms right there in the water, the fish will not survive. You're stopping the illegal fishing, fine. The fish will recuperate. But with the pesticides and all that toxicity levels, it will continue to kill the marine life.
It's not-
Isn't that where National Environment Authority should come in?
We are there. But I want to correct the impression.
And what have you been doing in that regard to stop this pollution?
First of all, I want to correct the impression that the lake is polluted or toxic. That's wrong. What you have measured is the levels of algae and at the hotspot, the base, the small post. That's all. That's not Lake Victoria, because Lake Victoria is live. It's able to be resilient and get that one. Now, what the government has been doing, and we have been doing, and all of us in the region. First of all, the government of Uganda, together with the government of East African Community, invested greatly and have had two projects called the Lake Victoria Environment Management Project 1 and 2, in which a lot of investments were done in order to, first of all, to build the capacity of the scientists and the sociologists and economists, and also to identify the issues that are a problem and also to rectify them. And there have been a lot of them. You've heard about the beach management units, you have heard about the industries. Most of them have been regulated to prevent to have them have pretreatment and so forth. So a lot of work has gone to address the issue of pollution. We're not yet there exactly, but what I'm saying that there is a population living in Uganda, living around Lake Victoria, which must benefit from the lake. Now we have a population that is there. What we're now doing is, and all the governments in the region are trying to put systems such that the waste that is generated by the population it doesn't all reach to the lake. By the way,
but right about now, as it is, all that waste by the industries is being released into our water bodies. What is NEMA doing to arrest that situation?
that's what I'm saying. All industries that we are licensing must have a pretreatment of the water before they discharge it in natural body. I want you to separate from natural processes and industrial processes.
So break them down, the natural processes and the industrial processes.
Okay.
For the viewer.
Rivers flow, and that's a natural process. When rivers flow, there is a catchment. There is where there is land and so forth. So activities on land, like farming and whatever, take place. And as a result of those activities, for instance, when it rains and if they
when you've sprayed your tomatoes, the pesticides will just...
when the pesticides go, they don't just go like flowing. There is a process. Pesticides get broken down. And that's why I'm saying farming systems, the farming systems have to be improved so that most of the...
Away from the water bodies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Away from the water bodies, so that any residual pesticides, whatever it is, caught up there and goes in. But let me tell you, whatever goes in the lake, because the lake is alive, there are systems there. So the assertion that you have pesticides in the lake, yes, you can measure and detect pesticides. That's okay, because we're in a living environment. I'm telling you, there are people here, you're farming and whatever, some of these residues go there. But what is the extent of that pesticide there? The alarm is that if you see a pesticide in the water, then there is a problem. That's the impression that I get from this. No, not so. That's different. Yeah.
The issue is not only pesticides. There are also microorganisms, microbacteria that is actually affecting the people, because the fish will consume this. In turn, I'll buy the fish, eat it. I'm telling you, Mr. Tomokuru, between December, I was advised by my doctor in January to start feeding on fish to get more proteins in my body. But I'm telling you, every time I ate fish, I was getting stomach complications. I went to a doctor, and the doctor said you're having gastrointestinal problems. And one of the interviews that were being aired here on these toxic levels at Lake Victoria, they said some of the microbacteria will cause gastrointestinal problems. So you understand, I might not be the only one. We could be many, many, many people in this country. Remember, the fish at Gaba, 50% of the fish was actually found to be having some microorganism, bacteria, and some pesticides inside. And this fish is headed to the market and it's being consumed by the people. Denying would mean that people are dying slowly. But as NEMA, what can we do to arrest this situation? Because it's already happening.
No, again, that is where we found issues with the reporting by NTV. Mm-hmm. When you don't keep, I mean, fish, like anything, when you bring to your home, you can wash it and whatever. If you don't, if you don't prepare it well or whatever, you have problems. But to say the lake, all water bodies have microbacteria. That's a system. You need those bacteria in the lake to do the processes they do. However, the fish caught in Lake Victoria, the one that you're saying that is all having pesticides and whatever, that from your study, the fish caught in Lake Victoria is not caught in the hotspots where where this pollution is, caught in the middle of the lake and whatever. And you see, what is the level? What is the level? Even your boat, because you live here, what is the level of that? The level of, for instance, the microbes that you say. Microbes might be on the surface of the fish or inside, which you wash and whatever. That's not an issue. And I think the presence of microbes in a lake shows that it's a living system. It's an integrated system. And actually, you need them. That's why Lake Victoria is alive, because it's a system. It's living things that are living there, breaking this. When the phosphorus goes there, there is something that converts that phosphorus to food, to energy and food. And there is also something that converts this. So that's the process that takes place. So yes, there is pollution that is identified at hotspots. That pollution is what we call transient. It peaks and it goes. It peaks and goes. But now, what are we doing here, outside? That's why we have processes at the industrial level. We have said no industry is put in place without a pre-treatment plus. At you've seen the solid waste collection. A lot of effort has been put by the Kampala State Council, Kampala City Authority, to ensure that your solid waste is collected and taken to a place. We still have challenges. We also have to educate people to be responsible, particularly in other way they dispose their waste, and that's fine. Another thing that I found out, people are saying that in your assertion that the fishermen defecate in the lake and whatever.
That was my next point there, because you did mention that some microorganisms that are natural are good for the fish. But then what about those who are openly defecating and pouring all this waste into the lakes, which in turn will end up in the bodies of the marine life, and then we consume that? Won't that have debilitating health effects?
No. Not at all. Let me tell you. No. Let me educate you. When you see now, fishermen go to the lake for more than 24 hours. Do you want them to come back from the lake to the land to defecate or whatever?
I would want the government to set up toilets in this area so that they can have defecation. You could have one landing site. They had only 3 toilets. Mr. Okurut, only 3 toilets. That's the reason they are going to these open water bodies to defecate.
No, defecation.
So would you just
no, I'm just saying,
want someone to defecate openly just because they are far away?
No, I'm saying
in the lake,
the amount of microbes that arise from those people vis-a-vis a lake like Lake Victoria is insignificant. And probably that's one of the systems that feeds in the system. You know, there are lakes in Uganda which are very pristine, clean. You can see up to the bottom, but you don't get fish there. You don't get fish because there's nothing to trigger fish growth. There's no algae which can start the series, cascading series that will bring out the process of producing fish. So a lake needs to receive nutrients. Nutrients are essential for the dynamics that produce microbes and all those things in the food chain, the algae, and all those other things in the chain, then to the fish. It is necessary. Now, what is the difference is, what the difference that from your study, from NTV study that I saw, it seemed to have been a fear. Once they detect something, when they measured and saw there was phosphorus, there was nitrogen, there were metals.
There was lead in there.
There was lead, there was iron. Oh, that is dangerous. No, that's different. Where does iron come from? Look at Lake Victoria, 6 to 8,000, and the total surface area around the lake, catchment, what we call the catchment.
We're not only talking about Lake Victoria, Mr. Tomokuru, even the tributaries that link to Lake Victoria, like the Nachivubo channel. Have you visited? Have you visited the Nachivubo channel?
Near there.
Have you seen the sheer pollution around there, the heavy metals in there? And remember, this is a tributary to Lake Victoria. So we are talking about pollution coming in from the tributaries, not only the main Lake Victoria. So what is the National Environmental Authority doing? You say you live there and you see the sheer pollution. What have you done to arrest the situation?
I don't want to agree with that. I see sheer pollution. Nakivubo channel is a drainage channel for Kampala, most of the Kampala city.
And I could tell you verifiably, many people dump pollutants in there.
That's okay. I agree. I agree with you. And I'm just saying that it is Nakivubo channel is the drainage, so that it's the lowest point. That's what I mean when to my drainage. So when it rains in all these parts of Kampala, all those things that drain into Lake Victoria, they wash and they enter what? The Nakivubo channel. And the Nakivubo channel conveys this through the system. That's why we're saying we're actually working so hard to ensure the Nakivubo channel doesn't channel itself as a river into Lake Victoria.
So how are you doing it?
It goes and breaks itself into that huge wetland and slows down the speed. So the purpose of that wetland is to hold on and allow solids and whatever to be dumped in the wetland, and then water seeps in through. So
is this a future project, or it's being implemented?
No, that's a natural setting of all the northern part of Lake Victoria. You'll find huge swamps and then the water body. Huge swamps.
So you'd want this drainage, pollutants to be stopped at the wetland level, not to reach the lake.
Yeah, that's the purpose of the wetland down there, which is actually the lower part, which of course people invaded. We have just been removing people. You've heard about cancellation of titles and whatever. The effort is to stop, to free that area and let the water from Nakivubo flow into the wetland, and then whatever debris and whatever it carries gets settled there first and goes into the lake, and goes in the lake with a little bit lower load than what it came.
A lower load, but still there will be pollutants going into Lake Victoria.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's the main issue we are dealing with.
We cannot. I mean, but we are coming back. We're coming back here.
Yes.
To how do we reduce what goes into Nakivubo channel?
Go ahead.
Now that is what the role of the Kampala City Authority. What they are doing. They have actually, remember, they've offered solid bins for putting solid waste. They've had the private collectors of waste to try to pick waste so that doesn't go into Nakivubo channel.
Now, the private collectors of that waste, it's contended by some people, investigators, that they get that waste and dump it straight into our water bodies. The private ones, what do you say about that?
That is illegal. If we get any more than that, they'll be prosecuted. Of course, in any case, in Kampala, there are registered private companies who have been allowed by cases here to collect waste. Not everybody. Remember, there are now a few. Now, those are the ones, and they have to deliver their load to Kitezi. That's where they're supposed to take it. Those individuals, I think you see, are just not been private. But if you're a private collector in Kampala State Authority, you are registered, and we know you. And we give you, NEMA gives a license to allow cases here to give you to operate. And we monitor. We have how much you get there and so forth. So we get that, and it's done. So what we should do more is here. If all people, and this is a responsibility, you should not look at cases here or NEMA or whatever. The generator of waste must be the first person to take responsibility. Why do you generate your waste from your house and then you go and dump it in the channel? I mean, that's what I'm saying. So the focus should shift. Government has a role. We have a role as government. But the citizenry has the primary role to do its part. And once they do together, we'll get a better low amounts of waste loading in the channel and then eventually enter in Victoria.
Do we have a legal framework actually compelling industries not to release waste into our water bodies?
Complete.
Because it has been happening. Whenever it rains, these industries will release waste. You'll be moving on the road and you'll be... there's that bad scent of sewage. Then you'll ask people around, what is happening? And they will tell you, well, when it rains, companies release the waste to move with the water. This is the same water that ends up in our water bodies.
No, contrary to what, it's mostly homes. If you look at sewage, it's mostly the homes in the high-density settlement areas.
Go around Ginger Road when it rains. You'll see.
Now,
and some people contend that waste is coming from the police station at Ginger Road.
Police station
When it rains.
A police station is a settlement. So it has a generator. And there's around there, there's a pond there, by the way. There's a pond that receives waste from police. You don't see it, but it's there. And that's where it comes. The idea is that does the waste coming from homes, is the waste coming from homes coming in a manner that's why is it discharged? So that's something I'm talking about. Settlements or where the houses are built or where people live should have very good sanitation facilities here. So that's where we begin from. So you see, we are trying to look at the end because we are coming from the receiver at the lake. But basically, we have to improve our sanitation around homes. We have to take responsibility as citizens, citizen responsibility. And that is more important than looking at the thing from the tail end. Now, what you've gone and the nation you've gone to measure, and by the way, your study, what they did, you took, I think, 52 samples, and you all went to those, from Kisumu. You were going to obvious places, hotspots, what you call hotspots, where there are collection sites.
But of course, if there is criminal activity in Kampala, we shall go to the hotspots where the criminal activity is happening.
Okay.
Why would I go to a place where there is no crime to assess crime? But then we have to go to those hotspots where the toxicity levels are really up and measure what... Okay, let's leave that. In your own assessment as NEMA, have you ever measured the toxicity levels at Lake Victoria?
That's a routine function done by the Ministry of Water. Actually, there's a Director of Water Resources who are mandated by law. We get their reports to do, or not only Lake Victoria, they do a water quality measurement throughout Uganda, all the water bodies. We have a water quality map.
So according to their assessments, is Lake Victoria safe?
Very safe. The water of Lake Victoria is safe. The fish of Lake Victoria is safe.
And according to the pollution, what is NEMA doing to actually arrest that situation, to ensure that we do away with all the pollutants, we do away with all these shenanigans and protect this lake? You also hinted, yes, pollutants are not so many entering into Lake Victoria, but some are entering in there.
Yeah.
So how can we curb this whole situation, purify this lake? 3 countries are depending on it.
We can't, you know what I'm saying, Lake Victoria, even its natural state, without people, will have hardy things. With the people, there is addition. But what is important is what I'm saying. The governments around the countries have enacted laws to try to prevent people's actions in the lake. Now, implementation of those laws is on, but what we know now, my experience is that the laws are better implemented if the people who are regulated are partners in the game. Yeah.
And at some point, government had outlawed plastics, but it was also discovered there was a lot of plastic in the lake.
Yeah, plastic, that's another story. But plastics, yeah, they enter the lake. We're actually having that study. Plastics earlier on enter the lake. And mainly that comes from the rivers that have direct access. That
tributaries.
That have direct access. And mostly, you see most of the rivers in the Ugandan side, the northern, from Busia, the side, most of the few rivers that enter Lake Victoria from Uganda side go through swamps. So mostly these plastics get held up in the swamps and collected there. But some goes through here.
When these reports about the pollution at Lake Victoria and the pollutants in our fish affect the exports, remember we've been bagging almost 600 million Uganda shillings annually from our fish exports. Would this affect that?
That's what we're saying, that your report, the report by NTV, and to conclude that the fish of Lake Victoria is not safe because the water is not safe is wrong. And we want to assure that the fish of Lake Victoria and all the water bodies in Uganda is safe. The waters are safe. When you get water in your tap, National Water has gone and made another effort to treat the water. Okay, so it's wrong, and I think that's the message you are saying, that such statements based on exploratory measurement is not science.
No, Mr. Tomakuru.
Yeah, so
these were concrete facts.
Yeah, I know. I've
by experts from Kenya, in Uganda. We tried to make an assessment. I told you from my personal story, I've been eating fish and having complications.
Continue eating fish.
Nope. I gave up on fish.
Continue eating fish. I want to advise you. The fish of Uganda, also the fish coming from Kenya, is safe. Forget about what you've been told, because that information, the way it was collected, the way it was packaged, we have done research on Lake Victoria. Government of Uganda and Tanzania and Kenya have put money to do research. And we have data. And I was surprised that the Kenyan guy came here and did
Because they were concerned.
No, yeah, they were concerned, but I think you should have started at home. There's information which you should have got here. Plenty, plenty of information. You should have got from Uganda here first.
And we did.
From?
We did. We went to Nachivubo Channel. We found a lot of metals in there.
No, I'm talking about information. I mean...
We went to L.Victoria. We found that it was heavily polluted.
No, you not L.Victoria. I want to correct. L.Victoria is a big lake. If you go to Nakivubo, by the way, if you go to Nakivubo Ogawa here, just ride 100 meters from there, you'll see a change. The lake is moving. The lake is alive. There are waves that come in, bringing fresh water in, carrying this in, mixing. So the resilience of Lake Victoria, from our studies, from what we have done, Lake Victoria is very resilient. We have not yet reached a level where it's breaking. No.
So let me get this straight from you. Is the issue of low fish stocks to do with illegal fishing or pollution?
Illegal fishing.
Illegal fishing. So
that's why the UPDF came in to help, to try to remove, again, people are the ones who are using nets for catching small fish, so the fish don't have time to produce and all this kind of thing. UPDF has come in, even put moratoriums that no fishing at this time to allow fish stocks to come.
That is one thing. Yeah. And the pollutants, the same people who are engaging in illegal fishing are the ones actually polluting that same lake. Like you contended, they're verified, you have no certificate, the only option is the lake. So who is mandated to actually arrest that situation in that regard, the issue of pollution? Because it's not the UPDF, I'm sure. For them, it's illegal fishing. So the issue of the pollutants, people putting pollutants in our lake, who is mandated to help arrest that situation?
My organization, as NEMA, we are the authority of government to regulate the environment in Uganda.
And
so
what have you done?
You can ask, that's what I'm saying. When it comes to other sections, we have done, that's what I'm saying. All those things that we've mentioned to you.
Break them down for the viewer.
First, number one, for all new industries, no new industry is put in place without pretreatment facility. That's a requirement. So that means that industrial discharges to the lake, all are to the receiving bodies are compliant to the laws. We have also the local authorities like KCCA and all the advanced centers. They are putting system to collect solid waste. They are putting system to plan actually settlements. Actually, the first thing is that how can we plan settlements so that people are settled in areas that are safe, are free from that. So those are the things that we would want to do. So collecting solid waste, planning where people settle, and also educating the citizenry, the citizens of the regions, or for Uganda, knowing that if you do the thing because you benefit as an individual, cumulatively catches up with you. So public education and awareness on the population is also what is being done, so that people take responsibility. The laws of Uganda say that you guarantee a clean environment, but you must be responsible.
And what is NEMA doing to combat the issue of sanitation in these communities surrounding these lakes?
So, as such, sanitation functionality is within the local governments. They're the ones who are mandated to that. But my ministry, our Ministry of Water and Environment, working together with Ministry of Health and Education, have got various sanitation programs. You have heard about the sanitation projects, school sanitation projects, all of them to address the same issue.
And the creation of latrines in these surrounding areas?
Those are also part of the system to get public facilities and in order to help people have where to help themselves. That's all. There's a lot of effort to try to address those issues of sanitation by local government, central government, and whatever.
In your opinion, what's the way forward?
Well, the way forward, first of all, I want first to assure the country and the people living in Uganda that the waters from Lake Victoria are safe. Should not be a cause of alarm as reported. The fish, therefore, living there is safe for consumption and whatever. But the way forward is that all of us were involved. The local governments, the authorities like KCCA, the central governments and whatever, we have to continue doing one thing, educating our public to take responsibility of the environment.
And you accepted that there is some low pollution there. What can we do to combat that?
The pollution, these efforts that we are doing.
Pollution already in the lake. What can we do to purify?
No, we cannot purify the lake. The lake purifies itself.
Can't we go in there and get all those plastics, get them out?
No. You see, we are going to do what you call dredging on elder hotspots. And I think there's been a plan by government to dredge the Inam Action, the Inam Action Bay, on a part of it to dredge it. That's all, to remove them. But because most of those things are not in the main lake, so dredging of those hotspots would be one of the plans that we have.
Executive Director Tomok Root of the National Environment Authority talking to us issues